Hey everybody, what's going on? We are back talking cameras, and I have in my hands once again the EOS R. Now from the title of this video, you're thinking, is this a new camera? No, this is our thoughts on it. This is what we consider to be the Mark II of the EOS R, and because of obviously software, a lot of the improvements Canon's gone through, the new lenses that Canon's introduced, so many new things to the EOS R from what we reviewed a year ago. We'll put a link to that review in our description below. Okay, first let's talk about the EOS R in terms of the firmware updates. Now, when Canon first launched this camera, look, we thought it was mainly a photographer's camera, and that's what we pointed out. It did have video functionality, it has that 4K and 1080 and 120 frames at 720, but you had to use EF lenses because there was only a few lenses out there, and because of the major crop factor in terms of video, a lot of people were shrugging this off. Okay, fair enough. And a lot of people did just that. The 1635 EF lens by Canon, everybody was using that, but it's a bigger lens, and it's a softer lens compared to the RF variants out there at the time, which I believe was the 24-105 and the 50-1.2. Yeah, those lenses, the RF lenses, are super sharp. They were beautiful lenses. And we talked a lot about them back then. But now, with the introduction of new firmware, new lenses, everything has changed. Let's talk about the insides on this. I'm not gonna go through all the specs on it. You know, it's a 30 megapixel full frame sensor on this. As I mentioned, 4K up to 30 frames internal. You've got ISO, which is decent, low light, decent performance. It's fast, everything else. But with the new release of 1.4, eye tracking, which was just a blip on the screen a year ago, I mean, this thing locks on to the eyes fantastic. I mean, it's fantastic. And from a distance, and now is it as far as Sony? No. Sony still has an edge, but is it better than Nikon? Yes. Is it better than Fujifilm? Yes. Is it better than Panasonic's Lumix S1 and S1R? Yes. This is number 2, and in some ways, right up there at number 1 in some variants, because it really is that good. And I'll tell you why, because first off, you're gonna see a big difference when you're shooting at, say, the 1.2 lenses like the 85 1.2 I have on here and the 50 1.2. Shooting at 1.2 is not easy. And for a lot of autofocus lenses, they sometimes hunt. But with this eye tracking, it locks on like a sniper. And it just, right there, whatever eye is closest to the camera, and you got your shot, and it's in focus. But besides that, image quality is still fantastic. I love the raw images that come out of this camera. I shoot in RAW all the time. I don't shoot in JPEG. And the dynamic range is good enough for me because the exposure is always pretty on point. But the colors, the Canon colors are fantastic, especially when you shoot in portraiture. If you haven't picked up an EOS R and you were hesitant before, try it now with this 1.4 update. It's gonna make a big difference. Now, enough about that. Let's talk about the new lenses, because without the good lenses, the EOS R isn't what it is. All right, the first lens we're going to talk about today is one of my favorites on the system, is the 85 1.2. Now, this is the RF variant. Now, if you try the 85 1.2 on the EF mount, a lot of people complained it was a very slow lens. People prefer the 85 1.4, but this 85 1.2 is better in every single way. First off, let's talk about the size. It's a big lens. And I've got the lens hood on it, which is also very big, but I got to complain about this hood. I'll talk about that in just a bit, but look at this. This is a beast, but it's an 85 1.2 autofocus portraiture lens. The moment you take a first couple shots, you're gonna be like, wow. It blows out the background. I mean, it just annihilates the background. It's nothing. It's just like sprinkles of air. But the sharpness on where you're focusing is pin sharp, but the graduation from going from sharp to out of focus is beautiful, and it's fast. See, this is the thing a lot of people don't realize. They think, well, yeah, 85 1.4 is decent, or it can be slow, but 85 1.2 is not usually supposed to be a fast lens with autofocusing. It takes time for the camera to lock on. With the 1.4 update I mentioned before, even previously, it was still very fast to lock on to your subject, and it nailed the focus. And I did a lot of portraiture shoots with this. I did a lot of shoots with this lens, honestly. I didn't mind backing up about 3 meters to get everybody in focus because it was so good, I enjoyed it. Is it heavy? Yeah. Do you need the external battery grip for this? I'd recommend it. It gives a lot more balance to it all. But I will say one thing about this lens. My only complaint, Canon, why did you make such a very kind of flimsy, cheap hood to it? I didn't see this with the other lenses out there, but this thing, I mean, look at this. My fingernail makes marks. Now, of course, it wipes off and it's gone, but you know what I mean? This is not a cheap lens by any stretch of the imagination. If you want a portraiture lens for wedding photographers or studio portraits or just anything that you want to blow out that background, honestly, this is going to blow your mind, the images that come out of it. It's that good. Next on the EOS R, I have the all-new RF 24-70 f2.8 lens, which a lot of people have been waiting for as well because, yes, the EF counterpart, decent lens. When compared to the RF, no comparison, the RF wins on every single accord. First off, image stabilization in the lens. Known to have that in the previous one, it's in this one as well. It's slightly telescopic now. I wish it was internal because of the size of the lens, but you do get a little bit of a telescopic effect on here going from 24-70. It's not a big zoom, but it is something noticeable. So if you want to put this on a gimbal, that might be something you need to take in consideration. But if you're into photography, it's no issue at all. Image quality, fantastic. This is probably the lens I use the least out of all of them. And because after using the 28-70, even though it's a large lens, I love the image quality that comes out of that so much that I feel like the 24-70 is an alternative for people that maybe don't want to spend that kind of money, which I understand everybody has a budget. And if you are a working pro, obviously cost comes into play, and you know the 24-70 might be something that is in your staple already and you're used to it and you don't want to go to a 28-70, I get you. But however, it works great, feels great. It's not that heavy of a lens considering the other ones out there. So, but I mean, of course, all the RF lenses are considerably beefier and more robust than the EF counterparts, but the image quality's there. Now, the final lens that we're going to be talking about today is actually a lens I don't have on the camera right now, but we've been using it this entire review, and that is the 15-35 f2.8 RF lens on the Canon EOS R. Kai Hong has been using it. Kai Hong, you like it?
Yeah. Awesome.
It is, this has been probably the most surprising lens for me out of the 2 out of the 3 Trinities that have been announced or released to the public at least, because the 7200 is not out as of yet as we're recording this video. Anyway, the 15-35 will be the videographer's dream lens, especially on the EOS R. Now, we do know that there is a crop factor. I believe it's about 1.7 times crop factor to the EOS R when shooting in 4K. And that became an issue for a lot of people out there, especially vloggers or YouTubers that just didn't have the right lenses and they had to resort to using the 16-35 EF lens, which is very long and it makes it very hard to hold if you're, say, holding the camera in front of you and you're vlogging. And the 15-35, while it's still a little beefy, it's not as heavy as you might think. And I've shot a number of reviews with it, including this one. I've shot my Asus ROG Phone 2 review on it. I shot the Microsoft Surface launch first impressions video. I shot that on the 15-35, and it has performed admirably. Photography as well, there's very little distortion. I don't see any color fringing in the images, especially for a wide angle to wide lens. It performs really, really well. And I think for a lot of people out there, this could be the only lens they need for the EOS R, depending on their needs. It will be good enough for a lot of wedding photographers out there, a lot of professionals out there, or especially for videographers. You are going to really like this lens. I have no issues with it. It's really one of my favorites, and it surprised me the most. So if you need one lens with the EOS R and you're into 4K video, get the 15-35. You won't be disappointed. So we talked about Canon RF lenses. Let's talk about a third-party lens that's made for the RF mount, and that's by LensBaby. This is the 56 1.6. There's also an 85 1.8, and I have both of those, but I've been testing the 56 1.6 mainly, courtesy of Cathay Photos, so thank you guys very much for allowing me to try that out. This lens is an homage to more vintage style lenses in terms of rendering and in terms of feel. In terms of build quality, it's metal, it feels pretty robust. It's a manual focus lens, has some macro capabilities to it. It's not bad. It's not as, I would say, refined as the Canon RF lenses, but again, it's a lot less expensive, but it's still relatively pricey for being a third-party lens that's only manual focus. But the image quality, going back to that, it has a very vintage vibe to it. It's almost like you took Vaseline and you swirled it on the lens and you're shooting through Vaseline, especially when you're like wide open at 1.6. Only when you stop down to like f4 does the image start getting really sharp. I mean, when you stop it down, it looks a little bit more like other lenses on the market. Is it a must-have? No. It's an artist lens, it's a fun lens. I would definitely say invest in RF lenses first because you get autofocus, which obviously makes life a lot easier with autofocus. But if you are into manual focusing lenses and you want to try something different, give it a shot. I mean, I think it's around between 600 to 800 Singapore dollars, depending on the lens that you buy. So, I mean, if you have the extra cash, why not? Go for the Lens Baby. It's a weird name, isn't it? Lens Baby. So at this point in time, you're probably thinking that this is a paid video. I love the camera, I love the lens, I love everything about it, blah, 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 blah. It's not. Nobody's paid us for this video. These are my thoughts and my thoughts only after using the EOS R and the new lenses for the last few months. There are some things though I think that are worth noting, especially with using it for an extended period of time. You find some little nuances and some issues. First thing I found is that I had an issue recording video one time. It only happened to me once, but it almost ruined a review. And that was for the Microsoft Surface First Impressions. I took this camera with me to New York. I set it up into the room. I was recording all my first impressions to the camera. I did 2 takes. Both takes froze after 6 minutes in terms of video, in terms of the picture. Audio still was recording, but the picture froze. Luckily, I did 2 takes, so I was able to salvage the review. Otherwise, I'd have to re-record everything because of an issue with, I don't know if it was the memory card, I don't know if it was with the camera. It hasn't happened since, but it is worth noting that this did happen. So my recommendation is please reformat your cards anytime you're going to record video, just to be safe in case it is an SD card issue. Also, another thing that kind of came about, and it was really letting other people use this camera and playing with it for a longer period of time, was the weight. Now, there's no denying that Canon has nailed it with the RF lenses in terms of image quality, in terms of optics, in terms of image stabilization. They've done a tremendous job with it. But there is an issue, and that's size and weight. And for a lot of elderly folks that do use Canon cameras to shoot great photographs and go around and travel around with these cameras, these lenses can be very heavy for some people. So maybe this is something that Canon can look at in the future, maybe possibly through versions 2 of these lenses, or maybe just a different lineup that's lighter in weight, that's a little bit more user-friendly for some people that don't have the strength to carry this kind of kit around for a longer period of time. Also, image stabilization. This is something that I did notice coming about here and there with 85-1.2 in lower light situations. Even though it's a relatively fast lens, there are some times that my images were shaky. I really had to push up the ISO up because, yeah, there's no image stabilization. Now with the 2470 and the 1535, there is IS built into the lens, but even shooting video, I did find some of my footage still shaky with the IS turned on. So I know Canon has said that all future cameras are going to have image stabilization built into the sensor, but yeah, that's something that I did notice. Overall, I do think that the EOS R has come a long way. Canon has done a tremendous job with updating the firmware and really bringing this to be a very formidable competitor out there in the marketplace. Is it the pro camera a lot of people want, like a 1DX, Mark II variant? No, but for the average shooter out there, this is more than enough. If you're a portrait photographer, a wedding photographer, a wildlife photographer, you're gonna be more than happy. I took this camera out to the zoo, for example, with the 400 f2.8, and I got some beautiful shots. So 30 megapixels is enough for majority of people out there, okay? The camera's image quality is fantastic. And that's why I think that the EOS R, for me, after using it for the past few months, they got pro glass, good image quality, great colors. It doesn't have all the feature sets that other cameras do, but the sum of it all is that it's a really good camera. I have no problem recommending this camera to any videographer or any photographer out there. I think you're gonna really enjoy what I consider to be the EOS R Mark II. Anyway, those are my thoughts on the camera and the lenses. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Like always, follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube. Until the next one, take care.